good to see all of you back tonight. Two or three of you may think that this lesson couldn't possibly apply to you, but there's always hope that springs eternal. And for those of you who have been through these wars, I expect some amening, so that the benefit of those who are going through them could learn from your greater wisdom. Turn with me over to Proverbs 30, where Solomon says, "There be three things which are too wonderful for me, yea, four which I know not. The way of an eagle in the air, the way of a serpent upon a rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea, and the way of a man with a maid." The whole idea of courtship is an amazing thing to watch and observe as some young man, or maybe an older man, and a lady get silly and lose all sense of reason and begin to get acquainted with one another. It's an amazing thing, something to watch. Many of us have been through it. We've certainly watched it many times. And there are a lot of lessons to learn about it. The Bible speaks on it quite a bit. As you choose a mate, there's a lot of people who enter into dating relationships without choosing a mate as a part of it. If you're not going to look at a young woman or a young man with a view to whether or not you're going to marry, what are you doing? What's the whole purpose of it? And so, in a lot of societies, ours included, this whole business is left to the hands of children, as if children had the intelligence to make these decisions. We've been through several generations of this, and as a society, it's turning into a disaster. As children, and by that I mean people up in their 20s, are left alone to try to figure out who in the world they're going to marry. Your parents should exercise some discretion in life, and if you are a parent, you ought to exercise some discretion in your son and your daughter's life, in trying to influence them as to who they should marry. Because there's a whole lot of folks out there that just are not compatible with them. They may think they're compatible, but since you've known that child from the day he or she was born, this isn't going to work. And you ought to at least exercise some caution about it. Say, hey, let's stop and think here. This doesn't seem wise. 1 Corinthians 7, if a father thinks that he is not acting fairly by his unmarried daughter when she is past her youth, and if under these circumstances her marriage ought to take place, did we miss something? Or you just passing through for a bus? It's sort of like it's on. On better? Some of these people, you're one of the ones that should be listening to this lesson. So let's get this on so you can learn from this, like Dave will. Huh? Who stepped on the cable? Adelaide stepped on the cable? She's up there tonight. She's going to be a relative of yours soon. Be careful. All right, are we on now? Okay. When she is past her youth, and if under these circumstances her marriage ought to take place, let him act as he thinks right. If he's doing nothing wrong, let the marriage take place. On the other hand, the father who has definitely made up his mind and is under no compulsion, but is free to carry out his own wishes, and who's come to the decision in his own mind to keep his unmarried daughter at home, will be doing right. short, the one who consents to his daughter's marriage is doing right, and yet the other one will be doing better. All of this referred to a time of difficulty in the society and in the church. And perhaps you can see that there have been times of difficulty in our society, times when our daughters were not ready or ripe for marriage, times when the situation was wrong, and you as a father ought to strongly refuse as much as is possible in our society, because you realize these two people can't support themselves, can't live separate from you. They're going to be living in a back bedroom, which is not comfortable for them or you, and will not be a good necessary beginning to the marriage. Slow down. Slow it down as you possibly can, and you children ought to listen. A lot of times, dating is frivolous. It has no purpose whatsoever except on the woman's part to get a free meal, and on the guy's part to smell a little perfume in life. There ought to be a purpose. Oftentimes it is at an age too early for choice. I see people dressing their 12 and 13 and 14-year-old daughters, like hookers, frankly, trying to get them on a date. And letting them date young men early in life. Are you out of your mind? Have you no sense as a parent to let your child grow up to a point where they can sort of make semi-intelligent decisions? And your son, you need to kind of keep them locked in a room somewhere sometimes, instead of letting them out, foisting them out on the public in such an attitude. Dating's become an end in itself, and has no real sense of purpose. You as a parent should provide a place in your home for your children. We've gotten to the point where everybody dates by going out. We're going out somewhere. We're going out to the movies. We're going out to events. And the last place we find many children, the last place we want to do is be at home. And their parents, the last place we want you is at home. Good night, get out of here. You're interfering with my watching reruns of WWE wrestling. Instead of making them comfortable in your home, making that a part of their life, providing some sort of example for how they ought to behave, you need to be very concerned when every contact that your son or your daughter has with somebody is not under your supervision. Now, granted, you're going to have to leave a little room on the leash and let them get away some, but I'd sort of keep them under that leash just a little bit where you can see what's going on and be some sort of influence. Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate that. Some more of you older folks ought to be amening here some. What are you looking for? What are you looking for? The Bible in Genesis says it's not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him. Is that what, I mean, I hear all these people talk about hooking up and how they're in a relationship. Goodness gracious, I've seen 13 and 14-year-old kids announcing on Facebook that they're in a relationship. What? What? Are you out of your mind? Parents, pay attention to what's on your kid's Facebook page. In a relationship? What are you talking about? Are you looking for someone who would be a suitable mate, a suitable marriage partner? It's a sensible question. It's the way God intended for you to approach this whole thing. A lot of times we are looking for foolish things. Now, I understand. Don't think John is an idiot. I married a beautiful woman. Didn't you, Bob? Absolutely. Better say that, Bob. We'd both be in trouble. But was that the only thing? You know, I've seen a lot of people who seem to want to date some woman simply because she's beautiful or he's handsome. In Proverbs 31, charm is deceitful and beauty is vain. The woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Is that all you've got to think about, is just how beautiful he is, she is, and not what the relationship is with God? That would seem to be, if you're a Christian, would seem to be the first thing that you really want to be concerned about. Is what's her attitude toward the Lord. Now, yes, I understand that she's pretty, and that's one of the things that attracts you to her. But there's a lot of pretty people out there. So, what's her attitude toward God? We live in a society, friends, where so many of the men and women out there don't have any thought about God. Is that what you want in your marriage? Is that what you want for a family? Because I can assure you that your husband will get older. Your husband will get fat. This is Indiana, after all. Your husband will get, so will your wife. So will your wife. And you'll lie to one another and claim that you both look the way you did when you were 20. That's what you get paid for as a husband or wife. But it won't be true. You will have aged. Beauty will fade. But you know, that attitude toward God is going to sort of keep on. In fact, if they don't love God, it might even get worse. Is it all just about fun? Is it all about fun? And that you're not able to not go out somewhere? You know, there was a woman here in the church, and she kept putting stuff on her Facebook page where she was out in all the nightclubs and the dance clubs looking for a man. What? There's where you're going to find the perfect mate? Have you not got any better sense than that? You know, when you fish, you at least know to fish where the good fish are and not where the trash fish are. And that may be where you could find them. Is it all about having fun? Is it all about money? You know, are you looking for a wealthy woman or a wealthy man? Somebody with a good job, and you're passing by a lot of good men and good women who may not have a lot, but they're good people and would do a good job for you and would be a faithful mate. Are you all worried about her brain? I have known of men who just refused to date a smart woman because they didn't want anybody smarter than them. Well, it's obvious. Obvious there what the problem was. Your ego was in the way of this whole thing. Are you so desperate to get married that you'll take the first person that asks without stopping to think about it? I've known of young girls who were so desperate they thought to get away from their home and mom and dad that the first person who sort of smiled at them, they were ready to marry. And they got married right away, as teenagers or otherwise. Are you just desperate to get married? Or have you stopped and thought about it for just a little while? Is it all about sex? My goodness, we live in a society. I saw some statistics the other day somebody put on, said that of all the high school kids, and these were members of the church, Christians, 56% of them said they were perfectly willing to have sex before marriage. And people are talking about a sort of an atheistic sexual relationship or sexual attitude where in all other regards I'm a wonderful Christian, but when it comes to sex I'm basically an atheist. I don't believe God even thinks anything about that. Huh? Do you realize that's the same attitude Judas had about money? In all other regards, he was a wonderful fellow, except he was greedy. Well, are you proving something? You know, I've seen people get married because they wanted to prove that they could get married. And so they wanted to show their friends up. I told you we went to Gloria's reunion, and so help me. There were 2 or 3 of those people going around there. I saw 2 or 3 old men trying to suck in their stomachs. Here they were, 60 years old, still trying to suck in their stomachs and pretend that they were not fat. And there were 2 or 3 of these women dressed like they would when they would have dressed when they were in their 20s. Oh, that wasn't working. It just wasn't working, let me tell you. It was time to face some facts. Are you proving something to a friend or to your parents? I can get married. It just sort of becomes an act of defiance. What are you looking for? What's it all about? Or are you looking for things that last? You know, we spoke of abiding things this morning. Are you looking for things that last? A beauty of the person. In 1 Peter 3, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives. When they see your respectful and pure conduct, do not let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair, the wearing of gold, or the putting on of clothing. Surely that's not the only thing pretty about you, is the clothes you wear. But let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart, with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. But this is how the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn themselves, by submitting to their husbands, as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord. And you are her children if you do good and do not fear anything that is frightening. Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. Oh, I could talk a long time there. You know, in marriage, you are heirs together. It's not exactly still a everything's on you thing. You're heirs together of the grace of life. So that if you don't treat your mate well, the Lord may not listen to your prayers quite so well as you'd like him to. He's going to quit listening to you because you've quit doing what you ought to do in your marriage. But are you looking for beauty in that person? Are you looking for a lasting enjoyment? You know, it's one thing to enjoy all the fun things you can do when you're 20 or 25. It's another thing to think about being with that person for 50 or 60 years or more. Wives, submit yourselves. Submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. The husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Husband, love your wives, as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own body. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourisheth and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body. Therefore a man shall leave father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. In verse 33, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. Now I want to talk about that just a minute with you. Every now and then I've taught And there seems to be an attitude that has developed in this country that says that everything is a 50-50 relationship. And everything, I'll hear people who have had a marriage problem. They got a marriage problem. Two of them can't get along with one another. And people will say, well, there's fault on both sides. Huh? Said what? I think you misunderstand the relationship that pertains in marriage. I'm a husband. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter to me how my wife behaves. Did you know that? I married her. I signed on. I have an obligation to love her. Period. That's it. Now she can be grumpy, oh my yes, completely without reason. She can be difficult. She may get old. She may lose her mind. She may behave shamefully. But did you know it's not a 50-50 relationship? I still have 100% of an obligation to love my wife. That's as simple as it gets. Quit trying to imagine that because there's fault on both sides, that absolves somebody of something. It doesn't absolve anybody of anything. You have the obligation that God laid on you in the relationship. Now, if the two of you can get along a little better, that makes it a whole lot easier. It makes it a lot easier, a lot more pleasant, a lot more enjoyable. But, when we marry, we make that statement, usually in most marriages, in sickness and in health, in prosperity and in adversity. Just what did you think that meant when you said that? Who did you think the adversity was going to come from? Well, it might have been your mate. And so here you are as a wife, and your husband has lost his health, he's lost his mind, he's lost his money. I really appreciated the funeral I went to the other day. My son did a good job, and I asked his wife to tell him I appreciated the sermon he gave, but I appreciated especially one point that he made in it. This man, he let Josh know that he was going to come into a lot of money, several $1 million. And he wanted to, Josh, he wanted to set some things up. He wanted to have a program going on whereby he would support gospel preachers, and that he would set up a trust fund supporting gospel preachers here and there. He wanted some other brethren to sort of oversee it. And so Josh asked me to suggest 2 or 3 other men who would serve as board members to oversee that. So we got it all set up. Well, the money never came. In fact, they cleaned out his bank account. It was one of those foreign princes that he fell for. It was a scam. He lost an enormous amount of money. But Josh mentioned one thing, and I'm going to mention the other. Josh said, if you thought you were going to come into several $1 million, what would you have done then? Had you been planning on that big house? Been planning on that luxury boat? Been planning to quit your job? Maybe you already quit it. What would you do? This man was thinking about what he could do as a Christian And whether he was right or wrong, or whether he got fooled or was scammed, it was noble. But what I want you to think about tonight is his wife. What was his wife to do? It was her money too. Was she going to be disgusted and treat him badly the rest of their way? Or still respect and honor her husband? She was under that obligation. And just because maybe he didn't have a job or a good job, or his health had failed, or his mind had failed, or maybe he was just an ornery cuss, she still had the obligation, and it was 100% her obligation. And she did it. She's a good woman. Now that same thing pertains in other aspects of life as well. I spoke briefly this morning about our families, about honoring your father and mother. I had a friend come to me one time, and he said, "John, my dad was a bum, a fornicator, a drunkard, and he deserted me and my mom when I was just a child. But he's contacted me again here now that I'm adult." This man was about 30, 35 years old. What in the world should I do? You know, if the same thing pertains there, it doesn't matter whether your parents are honorable. You have the obligation to honor them as best you can, in the best way that you can manage. And that's what I told him. It's 100% your job. Now, they could make it easier, but it's all on you. It's not a 50-50 thing. It never has been. It never will be. The same thing pertains in every relationship we have as Christians, in the church, among friends, among brethren. My obligation is my obligation. And what you do or don't do doesn't change my obligation at all. It either makes it hard or easy. That's why the Lord says over in, I believe it's in James, he says that we should be easy to be entreated. But still, we may have to be entreated, whether we make it easy or not. So what are you looking for? Are you looking for a woman who understands, or a man who understands that no matter what, sickness and health, prosperity and adversity, there's the love and respect that ought to pertain in a marriage? That's why dating isn't just a sport. It's something that you ought to look at and consider seriously. Are you looking ahead to a family? I see so many people, and I get really upset, where a young couple says, "Oh, we're not going to have a family. We don't want children." What is the matter with you? What is the matter with you? Oh, children are just a nuisance, and they just get in the way, and they cost a lot of money. What are you out of your mind? Why are you getting married? Are you just going to practice having children? Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment of their promise, that it may be well with you and that you may live long in the land. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Why don't you want to have children? How utterly selfish can you be? How utterly selfish not to want to have a family. You really, if you're a young man or a young woman and you're considering marriage and your mate says, no, I don't want children, for goodness sakes, walk away. Because there's something wrong with that attitude. Somebody else can lead me in besides him. I love that thing. Keep it up. Some respect of a mate. You're going to assume obligations to this person. Lifelong obligations. Are you ready to take them? Look beyond the moment. I've seen lots of people who would spend days and days and hours, loads of money planning a wedding. Now, I'd like for you to have pretty pictures of your wedding. We all like to see a bride dressed up and a groom that sort of doesn't slope in there in his overalls. We like to see folks dress up and show some respect to the time and the moment. We all like to be happy with them. We all like good food and cake, a piece of cake every now and then. And we like to smile with people when they have that happy moment. But look beyond this moment of dating, this good evening that you've had, and think about the long term. Tell those who are rich in the present world not to be arrogant and not to place their confidence in anything as uncertain as riches. Instead, let them place their confidence in God, who lavishly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. They're to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous, to share. By doing this, they store up treasure for themselves. That is a good foundation for the future, so that they can take hold of the life that's real. Stop and consider the situation and what's going on. You need to look ahead to your home. What's it going to be like? Will this person be a good mother to your children? You're going to love your kids. You're going to carry that baby for 9 months, right, Diana? 9 months. And you want to marry a man who's going to love that baby and care for it and provide for it and help raise the child. So you might give that a little bit of thought beyond, oh, he's so handsome and he has a nice car. My goodness. Or will she be a good mother? We've all seen mothers who were terrible mothers. They didn't want to be mothers. They were resentful about it. What about a good housekeeper? Can you tolerate a woman who lives like a slob? You might think about that a little bit. Go visit over at her house and have your eyes open when you go. You know, if the house looks like something exploded and a rat's been dead behind the couch for a couple of years, this might not be a good choice for you unless you love living like that. And the same thing applies to your husband. Is he going to be able to provide? Will he work? You know, I've seen women who would hook up with some old guy who, for one thing, never did marry them. For another thing, hadn't had a job in the last 20 years. What's wrong with this picture? Have you no respect for yourself and your children that you won't marry a person who can provide for you? Now, that doesn't mean that he has to have you living in the Taj Mahal, but will he provide for you? You know, will he maybe go out and work some overtime and work that second job, whatever he's got to do, to make sure you've got a house over your head and food in your tummy? Is it going to last? We read 1 Corinthians 13 this morning. Is it going to last through the years? Is this, I want to stress this. If you've never read the Song of Solomon, a lot of people read it and they get sort of hung up in the sexual sort of references. A lot of young men, ooh, the Song of Solomon. And you're really kind of missing the whole point there about the Song of Solomon. The Song of Solomon is describing a girl who loved a shepherd. She was a shepherdess. But a wealthy man, the king, came and saw her and fell in love with her and took her away to the sea. And she spent all her time mourning and grieving, wishing she could get back to her shepherd ways. What was wrong? Well, sometimes you need to ask yourself, would this person fit in with my family? Because when you marry somebody that doesn't get along with your family at all, things are going to be bad. It's just not going to be comfort. You have an obligation to your family that you can't run away from. Yes, I know you leave father and mother and cleave to your wife, but you still have to honor your father and mother. And if this person can't get along with them at all, you're going to have a hard time on it. And secondly, what about that station in life? I know that if you've got a college degree in English literature, that you can marry, certainly can, some gorgeous babe who quit school after junior high. But what you going to talk about? Because sooner or later, all the love and affection and the romance is over, and you got to talk about something. You got to at least pick something on TV to watch. My goodness. What are you going to see? And you can reverse that picture. There that bozo is watching football. He's got the NFL channel. He watches football about 18 hours a day. Or golf, which really puts you to sleep. How are you going to talk about something where you two completely are from different stratospheres, different levels? You better think about that before you get into it, because the obligation is still going to be there. And after the, wow, he's handsome, wow, she's gorgeous, wears off, you're still married. Is that fit, that station in life where the two of you sort of are together, is that going to work? If she's accustomed to having a yacht and flying in her private jet here and there, and you're used to an old Chevy pickup, things may not work well. She may have some difficulty adjusting. You may have some difficulty adjusting to one another, because you want this person as a companion through the years. Yeah, she's gorgeous. Or we want to get married. But maybe there's a little bit more to it than that. And maybe you need to look at this situation. We have differences between us. Can you mesh the differences? Can you make that jump? Because it may be a jump. It may be a difficulty. That's some of the reason why usually it doesn't work if a 20-year-old guy marries a 55-year-old woman. There's something wrong here. This may work for a little while, but sooner or later she's going to be 75 and he's going to be 30. And he's going to be having to help her around on the walker a little soon, or vice versa. That's why you can marry somebody who doesn't speak your language. But, after the first day or two of the honeymoon, sooner or later you two are going to have to learn to talk to one another. And your entire background and culture is different. Can you make that jump? Is that possible? Yes, I'm not saying it isn't possible, mind you. It is possible. But it might not always be easy. It might be very difficult at times. And you need to consider that before you marry. Well, you can see other relationships that might pertain. People used to ask me on the radio what I thought about marriage between a black woman and a white man. And I take the same position. Is that scriptural? Well, yes, it's scriptural. Nothing unscriptural about it. The Bible doesn't say a word about it. But Is it always advisable? You're coming from two different cultures, perhaps. Can you bridge the culture? Yes, it's been done. We've had members here where it was done, and they bridged it very well. But it's not always done easy. So you need to look at it. Can I make this work? Because once you're married, you're 100% married. It doesn't matter if you don't like that culture, or you're having difficulty, or you don't like to watch Spanish TV all the time, or you don't like to watch the what is that? Black entertainment or the golf channel. It doesn't matter then. You're married. And it's 100% your obligation to love that woman or to honor that man. Because this is going to go on for 50 or 60 years, Lord willing. You're going to have to use some godly judgment. In Hebrews 12, having so vast a cloud of witnesses surrounding us and throwing off everything that hinders us, and especially the sin that so easily entangles us, let us keep running with endurance the race set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of the faith, who in view of the joy set before him endured the cross, despising its shame, and is sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. And he goes on to speak of the discipline that ought to pertain in the family. That could be difficult. Are you willing to do it? Do you love God? Are you willing to put him first? I see Christians every now and then who decide they're going to marry non-Christians. Can that be done? Well, in your first marriage it can be. The Bible condemns it in your second marriage. But in 2 Corinthians 6, here's the warning. Do not be unevenly yoked with unbelievers. What partnership can righteousness have with lawlessness? What fellowship can light have with darkness? Do you know what unevenly yoked means? I heard a story from a fellow one time. The Vietnam War was on us. And I had a friend who was bigger than me. And in the Vietnam War, there was a draft. We had the draft. And he and I were both in college. And he said, John, I'm going to enlist. I want to go in the Navy. I can't remember Navy or Air Force. I said, why? He said, well, I can't risk the draft. He says, because. I said, why? And he said, well, John, have you ever looked at the trees over there in Vietnam? And I said, yeah. They're all about that big. He said, well, look at me. I can't hide behind the tree. I'm bound to get shot over there. So I'm going in the Navy a little further offshore so that I don't have to hide behind that tree. Another story about another fellow, two policemen, where a big policeman, great old big boy, he picked some little bitty fellow about 5 foot tall for his partner. And so he said, why'd you pick him? He's no good. He said, well, let's imagine I go in a bar and we have to break up a bar fight. Who do you think that drunk is going to go for first? He's going to go for my 5 foot partner. And I'll have to stand back and straighten things out. That's unequally yoked. If you're having to pull the burden of the load, it's going to be tough. So here you are, a Christian, dedicated to God, and you want to marry somebody who doesn't care a fig about God. What kind of family are you going to have? What's going to happen to your children? Can you put up with that discouragement for years because you're married? You're 100% married. What partnership can righteousness have with lawlessness? What fellowship can light have with darkness? What harmony exists between Christ and Belial? And what do a believer and an unbeliever have in common? Paul was talking to you about the way I'm trying to. What agreement can a temple of God make with idols? We are the temple of the living God, just as God said, I will live and walk among them. I'll be their God. They'll be my people. Therefore, get away from them and separate yourselves from them, declares the Lord, and don't touch anything unclean. Then I will welcome you. I'll be your father, and you'll be my sons and daughters, declares the Lord Almighty. Can you marry somebody who's not a Christian? Oh, yeah. Should you? You need to think about that long and hard before you say the I do's. Now, I'm not saying you can't. It's the height of ridiculousness to marry a non-Christian. His thoughts aren't your thoughts. He doesn't think the same way. What binds him to you as God would have it? You don't respect the Lord and his commands. If the unbelieving partner leaves, let him go. In such cases, the brother or sister is not bound. God's called you to live in peace. You place yourself at a gross disadvantage in serving God. You place yourself in serious danger of being tempted. There are probably as many lost in this way as any other. But here's a suggestion. Convert them. Convert them. I didn't say you shouldn't go out with them. There's good people out there, been raised by good mamas and daddies, godly, modest, loving. They'll make wonderful mothers, wonderful fathers. But before you get married, for goodness sakes, convert them. I can tell you right now, 2 or 3 in this congregation who did exactly that. I'll hold my hand up first. My wife was a Baptist when I started dating her. First date we had, she knew I was a preacher. I said, well, meet me down at the church building after services over at the Baptist church. And we'll go out. What did we go out for? Pizza? I don't remember. We'll go out. And so she drove up outside that little congregation over there in Kentucky. And she said, well, I hate to just barge in. She said, I'll wait till I hear the organ playing and then I'll go in. And it never did play. Suddenly she saw people coming out and walked on in, and we went wherever we went. I can't remember. I can tell you others. One of your other elders is sitting back there. And he married a lady. He didn't marry her, but she wasn't a Christian when he met her. But he converted her. So I'm not saying give up on them. Only marry people, only date people who are Christians. But you need to convert that. You need to get down. My goodness. What are you going to talk about? You can't always talk about the movies and what was on TV last night. And after a while, it gets kind of boring talking about your job. So why in the world don't you talk about what really matters? Convert. Light shows up everything. You learn a whole lot of things if you'll sit down and talk about the Bible with somebody. You'll learn how they talk and how they think. Wake up from your sleep, rise from death, then Christ will shine on you. Act like people with good sense and not like fools. These are evil times. Make every minute count. Don't be stupid. I like this translation. Don't be stupid. Insist. Find out what the Lord wants you to do. Convert them. Start talking about religion. You're going to learn more about that, way more about that person than you do telling her how pretty her eyes are. Let me just tell you. And after about the 5th time you say that, you're going to get bored with saying it. It's a great opportunity. You're there. You know, you got to wait for the movie to be over. You got to go do something, talk about something after the movie. Why not talk about something that matters? This is the time for you to be faithful to the Lord more than in any other time. He or she needs to see your example. This isn't the time to start skipping church and showing them how little you think of your relationship with God. If you love Him, do you want to wish Him in hell? Because that's where this person you love so much is headed. Are you here tonight and not a Christian? You can be. We plead with you to come. To take the relationships in life seriously. To accept and shoulder your obligation. To live circumspectly. Redeeming the time, the Lord said, because the days are evil. Come, Father.